So Narada's answer starts almost with the last issue that she has raised, Queen has raised, that perhaps the eternal self itself is a fiction sensed in trance. Because this is a serious issue. There are states of consciousness in which the divine presence may appear clouded. The Queen is going through this state because of depression, despair, grief, frustration. The presence has been clouded. And when it gets clouded and we are wearing the dark lens of ignorance, and on top of it we have still more thicker lens of grief, we are not able to see things as they are. Very often that's why when people are in anger, I think that is what is being shown now in Mahadev, in Sati and Shiva's dialogue. That Sati in anger is unable to understand that Shiva is telling everything for her good. And everyone knows except she. But she represents the ignorant side of material nature. Avidyamai, though she in her deeper essence is Shakti, but she has become nature, ignorant nature. So this truth gets veiled. And the first thing that we need to remember when such states come to everyone. Sometime or the other, one passes through a condition when one may doubt all the beautiful experiences, all the touches that we have felt, and believe that, oh, all this, I don't know, maybe true, maybe just a passing thing, who knows. So, for that state of consciousness which the Queen is going through, because first that cloud has to be removed. Without that, nothing else can come in. So Narada, in one line, was then the sun a dream because there is night? It's just one of those one-liners which are so powerful. As human beings, we do it. That whatever beautiful things, and we do it all the time in life, even with human beings we do it. That there is so much good which has been done, but one fault or one error or one mistake or one hard word, and that we remember. So we have this tendency of looking at things in this way. We may feel 1,000 touches of the Divine Mother and her grace. And yet if one thing goes which is not according to our liking, we begin to doubt. So Narada says that, well, night and day, even the Vedic rishis used to go through it, and they used to speak of it as the day and the night, both nourishing the divine child. So to the true aspirant, they both come to nourish. When night comes, when the presence is clouded for whatever reason and there is confusion, then Sri Aurobindo says at that point of time, all that we need to do is to call Ma, 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 Ma. Not to take any major decisions at that point of time. Some people change the very course of their life because there is a temporary clouding of consciousness. So Narada, this is a serious emergency. We don't use the word, but it's a spiritual emergency. Nowadays this term has come, fortunately. It's a state of spiritual emergency, because if man loses faith, even if he loses will, if faith is there, there is hope. But if he loses faith and hope, then that's a very, very dark state. It's a spiritual emergency. So Narada immediately addresses it. Like in an emergency, you don't think of other things. Other questions can wait. But this question needs to be answered. So he says, was then the sun a dream because there is night? Reminding Queen, you must have had such beautiful moments, and you have forgotten all that just because today one evil is likely to strike. Hidden in the mortal's heart, the eternal lives. He lives secret in the chamber of thy soul. A light shines there, nor pain nor grief can cross. This is the solution Mother has given to moments when suffering seizes us. And once I think it was given also in the message card, it's there in Collected Works of Mother Volume 2, to know how to suffer. And amazing. Normally when we suffer, we end up loving suffering, or we end up wallowing in the mud of inferiority and self-blame, or we end up in the equally deep mud of blaming others and complaining others. But what is the way to suffer? To know how to suffer. And she says, when this happens, turn your suffering into a sword to go deep inside yourself, and then you will find there a light that no suffering and no grief can touch. It's an amazing experience to turn suffering into a means. So that's what Vishad Yoga. So Narada is telling her that there is, Queen, within you a light. Don't believe that just because momentarily things are bad, you are going through a nightmare, therefore sun itself is a dream. It's a clouding. And even now, if you want, you can touch that part in you where there is no grief and no pain. So he is reminding her. So what comes? A darkness stands between thyself and him. Thou canst not hear or feel the marvelous guest. Thou canst not see the beatific sun. So often the mother reminds, especially when people used to go into, she says, whenever you feel that you are besieged even by adverse forces and hostile forces. So the sadhaka asks, what do we do in that state? She says, go past the adversary. So how to go past the adversary? She says, look towards the sun of divine laughter. It's a marvelous passage. For those who want to read the full passage, a long passage, it's there in Thoughts, the Mother's commentary on Thoughts and Aphorisms, Volume 10. The sun of divine laughter, which is in creation. Go past, don't notice. If you notice, then he likes it. He gets strength. Like what do we do sometimes when children are very agitated and angry? The more you try to control them, the more they get restless. But sometimes a simple remedy is just not to notice. Leave them. And well, it works. Or also there is another method she has said is time out. It's the other way of doing the same thing. But for us the important thing is that there is a darkness which has come. And therefore you cannot feel the marvelous guest. And what is the darkness made up of? O Queen, thy thought is a light of thy ignorance. What is this light of the ignorance? It's reason. In ignorance, reason is the light. And as we are saying, it hides more than what it shows. It shows appearances but hides the presence. Its brilliant curtain hides from the God's face. How does it hide God's face? Well, you say God is there, but see what happens. Look at that beggar, look at this leper, look at your own life, look at somebody's life. Where is God? So we don't realize we have made many presumptions. If only we ask like Queen, we will get the answers. But we make presumptions as if we know. And sometimes it's good to tell a person who feels like that, well, if you already know, then there is nothing more to be told. One can go about believing in what one believes. So one goes by appearances and then says there is no God. Why? Because if God is there, this won't happen. If God is there, that won't happen. We never care to say, maybe I don't understand God's ways. Mother says this in Agenda, that everybody comes and tells me that this is bad, that is bad, you should do this way, you should do that way. She says, they come and remind me that, Mother, you have written there, cling to truth. Is there in Agenda. She says, and what to tell them? I have only put it. She says that. She says, but they don't understand it. And then she says that they even come and remind me of what Sri Aurobindo has written in first chapter, that the grace will not be with those who are, harboring this and that. She says, you should act You should do this. You should do that. She says, how to tell them that they understand nothing of what Mother and what Sri Aurobindo has written. And then she says, not for once do they think that maybe their own conception of truth is false. Towards the end, she says this one line. That they come and tell me, you know, Sri Aurobindo has written in chapter 1, the grace will not be with those. This is a very powerful chapter 1. So they come to tell me, Mother, you should remember. He literally saying you should act according to what is written there. They don't understand grace. So she says, not for once they question that maybe my own conception and understanding may be false. Always we should keep that margin, and a wide margin, that we may not know what is there. By admitting ignorance, we will progress. But if we believe that we know in ignorance, then our situation will be like that famous limerick that somebody would say that my name is John something and I am a graduate from Balliol College. And then he says, all that is knowledge, I know it. And all that I do not know is not knowledge. So that's how its brilliance hides God's face. We believe in the sufficiency of this knowledge, and that becomes our greatest weakness and our greatest insufficiency. Our biggest strength becomes our greatest weakness. Because Queen has said that reason is the highest and you must walk by reason. So he's saying that your own thoughts are hiding from you. It illumes a world born from the inconscience, but hides the immortal's meaning in the world. There is a beautiful, lovely Koyal or something here. Wow, this is a phone call. My God, what an unearthly time and so beautiful interlude. So very often how reason operates. So that's beautifully Sri Aurobindo is reminding that it illumes a world born from the inconscious but hides the immortal's meaning in the world. So Uddhav writes, Udho karman ki gati nyari, मूरख राज करत हैं पंडित फिरत भिकारी. And then he says something, why this Koyal thing was so interesting. Because one of the lines which I was going to say, which got interrupted by that sound of the bird in the thing, is there in Uddhav's writing, in the same poetry. He says, Ujjwal pank diye bagule ko, Koyal ke hi vidhikari. Why you gave a beautiful face and form and all fair to Bagula, who is a big crook waiting for the fish? And Koyal, such a sweet voice, made her dark. So what it's seeing? It's seeing the apparent facts of the world. But what it doesn't see is God's purpose in the world. And that purpose, Narad will reveal, let me not jump the gun. I feel very tempted to talk about it, but Narad will reveal what is the purpose behind this arrangement. That why Pandit Firat Bhikari and Murakh Karat Raj, the foolish sit on the throne and the wise man goes around with a begging bowl. Thy mind's light hides from thee the eternal's thought. If you want to know the divine mind, the meaning, the purpose of God in this world, you have to approach with tremendous humility. There is a beautiful line in Savitri when Savitri is approaching her soul. It's a state of humility. All that she knew was that God is, but who He was, she knew not. So that's the state. I don't know. But if we keep giving reasons, justifications, philosophies, then somebody came to Sri Aurobindo and talked all about Advaita, Visishtadvaita, Mayavad and this and that, trying to impress the Lord that now He will surely take me in His ashram because I already know so much. Now a little more in yoga of transformation, that's it. So Sri Aurobindo said, you know what, you are too perfect to be here. Masterly touch of humor. You are too perfect. I think it will be nice you keep lecturing on Advaita and Vishishtadvaita and don't put me into any of these slots. People put him into slots. You know, his philosophy is like Vishishtadvaita. Why can't we for one moment be a simple human being and understand what he is saying, and instead of putting into all kinds of slots? So here it is. So thy mind's light hides from thee the eternal's thought. Thy heart's hopes hide from thee the eternal's will. See, just as if the tube lights are on, very often we are not able to realize that, we don't need these lights. It's daybreak. So we have the mind's light. Thy heart's hopes. If there is God, He should do like this. This is my hope. Presumption. If there is God, I should not have any of these diseases. Least of all, I should not be coughing and talking about God. How silly. Everything we should take delight in. Probably I had a different reason for it. Explanation, outlandish, cosmic explanation of simple personal problems. That when you keep telling these forces, they are nothing, divine is everything. Say, oh, you want to see what we are? There we are going to make sure, find the weakest spot in your instrument. And we should still say, Lord, thou alone, thou art, and take delight in it. But our hopes, heart's hopes, things should be this way or that way. So difficult to know the divine will as long as there is preference in our nature. Then we should say, I prefer it this way and not thy will, because thy will may be far beyond our comprehension. Thy will may say, come up another time. Who knows? God's will doesn't work in human dimension at all. So that's why our heart's hopes, earth's joys, shut from thee the immortal's bliss. So every time the divine comes to snatch our little pleasure and joy, we say, how cruel you are, Krishna. So he says, okay, fine, you want Kurukshetra and not Vrindavan. Fair enough. Kurukshetra for you. Stick and hold on to your joys. But then we can't have delight. This also we saw in that Sati, and she says, you are very cruel. You are not letting me meet my father. What a cruel husband you are. Sati tells Shiva. Isn't it the right of every daughter and the duty of every husband? And you are not fulfilling it. And he repeatedly says, just don't go. Just trust my word. Or you become Adi Shakti and go. She says, how am I to become? He says, you have to get rid of your pleasure and pain and joys. She says, that's too difficult. I'll do it after I get back from my father's place. Look at, he says, because of this you are not able to experience the delight which I want to give you. So every time, there's a line in Savitri that Queen has said that heaven should reject its gift. Reject the gift that heaven has given. And at one place, Sri Aurobindo says, heaven's wiser love rejects the mortal's prayer. We can't understand it. He says that your heart's hopes and earth's joys shut from thee the immortal's bliss. As long as we want this, we cannot have the utter delight of the divine. These things may come to us as gifts. It's wonderful to keep it as a gift. But when we want and crave for it, then the Ananda of the divine is no more there for us. Thence rose the need of a dark, intruding God. Look, Sri Aurobindo is describing pain as a God. The world's dread teacher, the creator, pain. Because man is not yet ready to walk in freedom and delight, so he has to go through the painful, ordinary school. The painful school of ordinary existence. That is how Mother describes. That only if human beings turn to the divine, they would soar into eternity, breathe infinity. And then she laments, Divine Mother's lament. What a strange thing is this ignorance. Why do men love it? And love the very thing that will give them pain and subjects them to the painful school of ordinary existence. This is the paradox. And perhaps even the divine will find it hard to answer. Even when divine is manifest, wants that I want to give myself to you, but we don't. There is a letter of Sri Aurobindo. Blows do not come to you because there is something bad in you. They come to all human beings because they are in love with things. They are attached to things which will not last. But if we give ourselves to the divine, he says the divine gives himself to those who give themselves to the divine. So here is the whole catch. Therefore, pain has to come and push us out of our comfort zone. Basically, we get into our comfort zone of everyday life, everyday routine, and the divine pushes us out of that. There are various kinds of comfort zone. Physical, psychological. The world's dread teacher, the creator. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says, creates with his estrus. All things we see in creation come with pain. It's a creator, because without pain there will be no urge. That's why even for a baby's birth, there is pain. Conception, before that, there is a pain. It's an urge, pushes, and one creates. Ramayana came out of pain. The seer Valmiki saw that a cronch pakshi, they were mating, and suddenly some cruel hunter or fate or destiny, he shot an arrow and one of them was killed. And their anguish entered his heart. Oh, they were loving each other and they had to be killed. And that moment the first sloka comes. And then suddenly that pain opened a whole door inside him. He stepped into a state of consciousness from which he wrote Ramayana. Very few people, we of course are aware, but that Ramayana started, the birth of Ramayana starts with a shloka which is actually about pain, and pain, very earthly pain. So we have this, the creator pain. Where ignorance is, there suffering too must come. This applies at all levels. That's why Steve Jobs, I'm not much fond of him as a person or anything, but he gave a very good, interesting advice. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Because in his personal life, he went through a lot of problems. He had to really walk a long distance and very often go through hunger. And all this served as a catalyst for, the whole Apple which came up. Not the, Newton's apple, not the Adam's apple, but the Apple computer and all this. This man, because, it invariably gives birth to, it acts as a catalyst to open a door. But whether we enter that door or not, it's different. So pain is the creator. And where ignorance is, there suffering too must come. So if we want to be freed from suffering, we have to get free from ignorance. We can't just get free from suffering without being freed from ignorance. That is the real liberation which Sri Aurobindo speaks of, that comes in this yoga also. It's not mukti of the traditional kind where one enters into a nirvanic state of consciousness, but freedom from ignorance. So that the way we look at life, and at every level, even inwardly one is free from ignorance, but body is still in grip of ignorance. So even body has to get freed from ignorance. That of course comes later in Savitri. Thy grief is a cry of darkness to the light. So at first, darkness, the sense of separation, that creates pain. And this takes the form of longing. One can feel this pain in, as the mother says, in plants and trees, that they long for the light which has gone, for the light to return. So it takes the form of longing. longing for something. Then it changes into yearning. Or rather, first it is suffering. Suffering changes into longing. Longing changes into yearning. That is how it changes into aspiration. But originally, it is a longing for light, longing for love. But we shut the doors. When we are in moments of crisis, we should say, Mother, give us your love, your light, your peace. But what do we very often do? Oh, your love is not true. There is nothing like God's grace. So we actually turn our back against it. So this is where the reminder is that, look, when there is darkness, remember that it's a cry for light deep inside. When there is grief, there is a cry for light, and we must cry for light. Pain was the first born of the inconscience, which was thy body's dumb original base. Now, Srimad is revealing a very profound truth. Already slept their pain's subconscient shape. What is the subconscient shape of pain? It is the anguish experienced by the dumb, dark depths, abysses, because of the sense of separation. That state of consciousness is a state of pain. It's a shadow which is there in the abyss. And it's symbolized in many stories like, condemned from heaven, entering into a state of eternal hell. Or Prometheus, the bringer of the fire, he is tied to a hill where he is being eaten by vultures. So many other stories. But essentially, the conscious experience of pain comes much later. Pain is born with separation. The sense of separation from the divine. That separation is sensed by the inconscient. And pain comes to wake up. That's why we several places see in the very beginning in Book 1, Canto 1, that a light came and teased inconscience. It experienced that light as a pain. It first wakes up to pain. That's how it works. And the mother in fact says, ignorance is an action of grace on inconscience. So it wakes up. It discovers half light, half truth, its own ignorance, and wants to strive. So pain is there even in the shadow of subconscious. So those who believe that pain comes because of some karma, no, it's because the inconscient already slept their pain's subconscious shape, a shadow in a shadowy tenebrous womb. Till life shall move, it waits to wake and be. So to all of us, along with light, we are also given our quota of that shadow. And that is called in Christianity as bearing the cross of pain. What is this cross? Everyone has to bear one's own burden of the subconscious. And it comes so that it can be changed. But instead we want to throw it away and throw that great opportunity of participating in God's work. It's like a shadow which pursues us. In one cowl with joy came forth the dreadful power. It's very interesting image. Some of the images in Savitri are very interesting. In one cowl with joy. It's covered. Outside there is joy. Just as love came to her hiding the shadow death. So it's covered in some kind of a nice package, pain. So joy comes and says, I've got gifts for you. Oh, very good. I'm anyways very happy with you. We'll see the gifts later. So after some time says, okay, now let me see. I have enjoyed you. Show me the gifts. So joy says, here is my gift. And when we open it, there is pain. So pain comes in a call with joy. In life's breast it was born, hiding its twin. Pain and joy are twins. Pleasure and pain, sorrow and happiness. But pain came first, then only joy could be. Pain ploughed the first hard ground of the world drowse. We cannot imagine what life, if we could sense for a moment what life would have been. Even animal life. We say that, it's such a nice life. One has to just be in the jungle to experience that sense of fear that is there in a place where all animals live. There is another kind of jungle. And some people, of course, love fear and horror. But there is that state, pain, which plows the ground. And then life can come. By pain, a spirit started from the clod. By pain, life stirred in the subliminal deep. Interned, submerged, hidden in matter's trance, awoke to itself the dreamer, sleeping mind. It made a visible realm out of its dreams. It drew its shapes from the subconscious depths, then turned to look upon the world it had made. So step by step it happens. That starts with pain. Pain plows the ground for life to come, and we know that it's there in everyday life experience, that if we do not accept pain, we have to refuse the greater joy that has to come. What is that pain? It may be a small pain of moving out of our comfort zone. It may be the pain of foregoing something. When a child goes to the school, it starts with pain. The first day in school for most children is a day of tears for the child and for the parents. But teachers know. For the child, dreadful teachers. They do this with doctors also. A doctor injection de dega. I really hate this, they make me like a cruel fellow who is sitting with a huge injection. So as soon as children come, the first thing I tell them is, मैं injection नहीं देता हूँ. They don't believe. But then, sometimes pain is necessary. Without pain, we cannot be prepared for the next level of joy. We can have the little joy that we have. So if we want more effort, now even effort is pain. So there are a lot of people who don't want to make effort, but they want things to come. No, it's not possible. One has to make effort. And then the mind comes and fills this world with its dream. By pain and joy, the bright and tenebrous twins, the inanimate world perceived its sentient soul. So, pain comes, and when it's a play of God. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about it in that poem, Who? That how he drives us to weeping, then lures with his joys again. So when we, what kind of world it is, suddenly he will say, okay, I'll send you a little bit of joy. Because we have not yet sought for his delight. We have not been able to turn that pain into a poignant sword to go within. So again joy. And we say, thank God, you are so merciful, kind, grace. We forget. And then he says, you again forgot me. Again pain comes. Oh my God, I did it again. Sorrow, suffering. And then if we don't use that moment as an opportunity to go inside, again joy comes. Again pain comes. So we swing between the tenebrous twins Sri Aurobindo is describing. Else had the inconscient never suffered change. See, to go through change, it is like, disciplining oneself. Self-discipline is not an easy task by any standard. But without that, how can one experience delight? Without conquest of the ego, it's not possible to find the divine. Even if divine is present in our front, if we are full of ego and desire, we will only end up asking some boon like the asuras. Give me this, give me that. Because it will fail. But if we work upon these parts, because that effort requires tremendous inner sincerity and pain, because we have to swallow the poison. When somebody insults us, then we have to see how my ego is reacting and not just blame it on the person. That foolish person doesn't know how to speak. That's the easiest thing. No effort required for that. Or we complain, so and so, horrible. It doesn't require any effort. But effort is needed to surmount oneself. And then with that pain, it suffers change. It has to change into an image of the divine. Pain is the hammer of the gods to break a dead resistance in the mortal's heart. A slow inertia as of living stone. Life becomes mechanical everywhere. Even if we go to God's place, life becomes mechanical. And after a while, we are lost in the routine of everyday life. And when the divine picks up someone, oh, his time has come to come closer to me, then there is a shake-up. So first there is a wake-up call, and then there is a shake-up call. So wake-up call is a nice alarm, gentle one. And if you don't listen to it, then there is shake-up call. And if you don't listen to that, then there is a break-up call. So pain comes to break. What does it break? Dead resistance. We are refusing, either due to some rigidity in the mind or some narrowness in the heart or some strong fort of the ego or some clinging to some obstinate darkness and tendency. And that's why Sri Aurobindo says the divine Mother Mahakali, sometimes she can smite with pain if need be to wake the untimely slumberer. So she gives a little bit of shake-up. If the heart were not forced to want and weep, his soul would have lain down content at ease. So divine has this original plan of stealing from us rest and peace. So he is the eternal stealer, thief. What does he steals? Peace. Can we imagine divine steals peace? Because what we thought as peace was not the original stuff. We picked up some cheap stuff from the market and said, it is diamond. And we got it for 100 rupees. And we tell everybody, you know this diamond? I got it for 10,000. And we end up believing that it's a diamond. So one day God decides, fool, you don't even know what is a diamond. So he comes and we lose it. And then we say, oh, what has happened to me? Why such a thing? And then he says, now I'll give you the real diamond. Do you want it? Yes, of course. But there is a price. How much? Not for 100, not for 1,000, not even for lakh. How do we get the diamond? Give yourself. It's a very nice line of Saint Kabir. You want divine love and to taste it. So he says, ये तो घर है प्रेम का, खाला का घर नहीं. Khala is bua, maternal, paternal aunt, father, sister. He says, this is the house of love, not your auntie's place, mausi's place or bua's place. Why? What does he mean? He says, शीश कटाए भुई धरे तब बैठे घर माही. You have to pay a price before you enter. What is the price? Chop your head, keep it at the door. Then you get the right to stay there. That's why Kali beheads and carries the garland of skulls. What a fortune for these skulls to be close to the mother's heart. Misfortunate are those skulls that rest upon their shoulders. So here is another way to look at fortune and misfortune. So if the heart were not forced to want and weep, his soul would have lain down content, at ease, and never thought to exceed the human start. This satisfaction is never a good satisfaction. That way animals are also very satisfied and gods are very satisfied. That's why they cannot evolve. Gods don't want to relinquish their state and become human. But unless they become human, they can't go higher. That's why Sri Aurobindo in one of the lines in Savitri, cryptic line says, a god come down and greater by the fall. Another place he says, a godhead greater by the human fate. But see, Krishna, the eternal trickster, knows this. So when the mother asked all the gods, will you come participate in the supramental creation? Yes, mother. What do we have to do? You will become human? No, no, no. We'll be here. Krishna knew. He has been doing this trick for long. He says, I'll become human. But of course, not everybody can accept. So it was Sri Aurobindo in whom he goes and identifies with the human envelope. So one is in comfort zone. But from humanity, this rest has been taken away. And never learned to climb towards the sun. This earth is full of labor, packed with pain. Throes of an endless birth coerce her still. The centuries end, the ages vainly pass, and yet the Godhead in her is not born. So he says, yes, I know, but Queen, you are missing out. There is a meaning in all this pain. True. But there is an effort to bring out the Godhead which is hidden inside. That's what the divine is doing. And he does it with delight. And if we can participate in this change with joy and faith in our heart, then this change will become happy. Because then we will always know that with one hand he is smiting us and with the other hand supporting us. Again, Kabir, as he says, Guru Kumhar Shish Kumbh hai. The Guru is like a Kumhar, the Shilpkar, the sculpture or whatever, who potter. And the Shish, the disciple, is like a pot. So what do potters do? With one hand they put inside, from the outside they will give touches to shape it. So outside touch is hard. Tuck, tuck, tuck like this. But there is also support from inside. If there is no support from inside, it will just collapse. And after doing it, he will put in the fire. So we must trust the hand that is shaping us. That's a nice story with which we can stop. It's not a real story, but I guess it may be a real story, who knows. Twins in the womb, and they are discussing. Suddenly there is labor pain. Everything is contracting. Now for twins who are inside the womb, used to the comfort zone, it's like a Mahasunami and Pralay. Something is pushing us. What's happening? What's gone wrong? God is cruel, whatever. What is our mother doing who is outside? She's not doing anything to prevent this catastrophe which is coming our way. So when one twin says this, the other says, no. Let's see, it may be something good. What good? We were so comfortable. Suddenly it seems we are going into a narrow passage. Save, protect. No response. So one twin is saying, definitely this is the end of the world. And the other says, maybe it's the beginning of a new world. Who knows? Man, I am going to get crushed very soon. And the other one says, trust. After all, 9 months he has fed us. It cannot be that she is fed up with us. Maybe she wants us to have some new experience. Let us wait. And the cry and the birth of life. So, all birth into the spirit, birth into the new creation is with pain. But what is happening to the mother outside? Inside, the babies are debating and discussing, maybe fighting with each other. Your point of view and my point of view. But mother is saying, both my children are going to come soon into the world. She has already prepared for them a lovely place, got toys, and the father is ready with sweets. It's a celebration. But for children, it is the end of the world. So after describing this, Narada says, the ancient mother faces all with joy. So this is how we have to learn. Trust the mother. When we trust the mother, then we face all with joy. When we don't have trust, still pain is going to come, but we will face all with double pain, because already there is pain. And now we believe there is no savior hand of grace, there is no greater plan, no greater purpose. And that makes the pain 10 times worse. So this is the choice we have to make. Just these last 4 lines we'll read and stop. The ancient mother faces all with joy, calls for the ardent pang, the grandiose thrill, for with pain and labor, all creation comes. So we'll stop here and continue tomorrow. The small little announcement. Tomorrow there is a music program here from 4 to 5. And our program stands at 5:15. So if someone comes early, one can just sit and enjoy the music. Sampad has assured me that it will be over by 5 and we will start at 5:15. So any which way, even if there is 5 minutes overlap this way, it's a classical music, Indian classical, 4 to 5, and 5:15 we start our program as usual.